Happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. Another live episode of On the Wrong Lead here. And yeah, weather, fun stuff. We have just, I don't know, man. We have just like this tropical depression, I think is what it's technically called, or is it a tropical storm? I'm not sure what the actual thing is, but it definitely has brought depression our way. Obviously, last week canceling two of the big stakes races at Saratoga, and then this week, the Arlington Million Day has been pushed to Sunday due to the weather in Virginia. And the stakes racing at Saratoga on Saturday has been pushed to Sunday. And Friday's been canceled just completely. So, I know that as bettors, it gets frustrating, having to, especially if you're somebody who loves, playing Saratoga, it gets really, really frustrating. But one person I know who's probably more frustrated than even myself, because in his professional life this is affecting him greatly. Mr. Matthew DeSantis. Matthew, have you been zegging and zagging the last couple hours here, trying to figure out what kind of content you're going to be putting out for Naira?
Yeah, actually, I did that yesterday where I sat down with my colleagues and I basically said, listen, we're not really going to cover Saratoga at all. We're just going to focus on Ellis Park Sunday and Colonial Downs and a little bit of Del Mar. And, we'll obviously, if you go to Naira Bets, I have up my analysis of the 4-Star Dave that'll be run on Sunday. And I have a video coming out tomorrow morning with Sarah El Badwi and I, where we preview the 4-Star Dave and the Saratoga Derby. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of pivoting, and even Colonial, I have to compliment them for being really proactive about getting a lot of those changes made. Obviously, a little further south, more on the coast, they knew they were going to get hit pretty hard, and for them to kind of change all their days around from Thursday going to Monday, Friday going to Tuesday, Saturday going to Sunday. And so, obviously that has a little bit of impact on some of our races as well, because in the Saratoga Derby, there are a number of horses that are cross-entered in the Secretariat Stakes down at Colonial. So again, thinking about things from a betting perspective, we really won't know until scratches come out in some instances where horses are going in those two races. And that could have a pretty big impact on the pace dynamic and the way things are all going to play. So where can we bet tomorrow? We can bet Del Mar tomorrow, that's for sure. And we can have some fun. We'll fire off some bets. So, but yeah, man, otherwise just staying dry up here and glad to be on. Here I thought I was going to see the rest of the guys, but, I'll just see you, and that's fine. That's all I need, really.
I mean, it was a surprise to me as well, because I also thought I was going to see the rest of the guys. But apparently, things change. I know Mark is traveling, and Caleb is ever trying to get done with that damn I
told him this was the toughest part, was just the writing. That's the toughest part.
You want to know what's funny? Just before we jump into this Del Mar card on Saturday, talking with Caleb, this was last year, and when he first got into the program, and he was talking about this, and he's like, dude, I don't have to go back to work till like Labor Day. He's like, we could just spend a month at Saratoga. Like, so we were looking into getting an Airbnb for like a month, because I'm basically full remote. And so I have, tons of vacation. And so what I was basically going to talk to my boss is like, hey, I'm going to be off Thursday, Friday for like the entire month of like August or something. Right. And, just make sure, negotiate obviously with like the workload and stuff, make sure like get that cleared, and basically work Monday through Wednesday from an Airbnb at, in Saratoga, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just go to the track. And then at some point, like I was telling my wife this idea, and she's like, but Caleb's got that thesis. Like, is he really? And Caleb's like, it's fine, it's fine, like it's not going to be a problem. And then just like every time I talk to him, he's just like, dude, this is just like this is a bear. This is ridiculous. So,
It is. No,
so
it's the worst part. It's the worst part.
yeah.
So
Did
everything
you
else
did,
is easy in comparison.
you have a master's, correct?
I do have a master's,
Yeah.
and but I backdoored my way into it. So it's a long story. But I managed to get a master's without ever having to write a thesis. But I did have because I was in a PhD program at the University of Florida, and I went through and you have to do something called comprehensive exams when you're in a PhD program. And so I took my comprehensive exams in my two primary fields, which were political methodology and American government, and I passed both my comprehensive exams. I defended my prospectus, which is like kind of the outline of your dissertation. And then I got to Caleb's stage of writing, and I was a 25-year-old young man in Gainesville, Florida. And believe it or not, Josh, things kind of went off the rails. And things didn't get written the way they probably should have. And so I never finished my PhD, but but the University of Florida had a policy that if you were in the PhD program and passed your comprehensive exams, you were automatically granted a master's degree. And so, as kind of an equivalency. And so, I got my master's degree through that process, and so never had to write a thesis. And then I was fortunate enough to get hired at the University of Texas El Paso before I ever got to my PhD. And then I thought, oh, I'll just work and to finish up my PhD, and of course that did not work out. So, but I managed to do okay for myself. So it's, but it is the toughest part, truly, of just down and writing, because there's not the sort of structure that you have with a classroom environment.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who went to try to get his PhD. He got his master's. It was like a combined program, right? He was TA, he was a TA, and he was in a grad assistantship and all that.
Yeah.
And so he got the master's part done, and then he got all the coursework for the PhD done, and then obviously there's a dissertation for your PhD, and he just like he couldn't break through, like he just he just at a certain point they were like, you gotta shit or get off the pot, and he's like, I'm getting off the pot.
Yeah, that's what I was. I was like, all right, well, I've already got a job, so I'm going to be off the pot. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, but it's funny. I mean, everything worked out great for him because it took him a while because he was in the life of adjuncting and stuff, and like, it was probably of all people how tough that life is.
It is.
And so he was adjuncting at two places, teaching more than a full-time course load and making half as much as a full-time professor. And luckily, he's landed on his feet. He got a job in instructional design.
That's
one of the universities. He's like, he loves it. So I'm really, really happy for him. It's tough out there in the world of education. I actually, when I finished up college, my old band director had moved out to Case Western, and so she was like, "Hey, I got a grad assistantship. Like, do you want to come?" And she brought me in for an interview. Like basically everyone loved me and was like, they're ready to give me, the grad assistantship, but they were going to give me a grad assistantship in music ed. And I wanted it in performance because I wanted to be a professor, like teach saxophone in college. Right. And, so I ended up not going through with it, but I'm like, academics, man, it's a wild West out there.
It is, and I was really lucky. I'm sure this is a sort of riveting discussion all of our viewers really want to watch, but I was really, really fortunate that I got my foot in the door and I got a visiting professor position, which is a full-time spot and gig and at the University of Texas El Paso in 2007, and then I got a tenure tracked position, which was full-time at High Point University in 2008. And what happened in 2008, of course, is the recession happens. And all of the jobs in higher education just disappear overnight. And so I had already gotten my foot in the door and gotten a full-time gig by that point. And all of my friends who were a year behind me just completely screwed. And they did exactly what your friend did, was they just cobbled together adjuncting for the better part of 2 or 3 years until those jobs started to come back. And it's definitely kind of crazy to see the way the job market and the economy kind of impacts all this. But listen, let's talk a little bit Del Mar.
Yeah, absolutely. We were going through, I was going through this mentally, trying to figure out, hey, what are we going to cover this week? And once the weather stuff hit, I was like, well, the one place where weather almost never becomes a factor is San Diego, California. So we'll take a look at this Del Mar late pick five. I thought it was interesting if there's one very heavy favorite
Yeah.
in this sequence that I think I'm going to try and get around, and I think it makes this an interesting sequence. Chalk eaters, if you're out there and can't get around it, then I think maybe there might be a little bit of a harder time trying to get some value out of this. But I don't know. Interested to see where you kind of landed here. But we're going to start with race 6 mile
Mhm.
on the turf. It's a $50,000 allowance. And we got a nice full field of 9 here. And yes, they are going to be racing on grass, which is something we haven't seen in a while. Yeah, your 3-1 favorite is the 2 Belmont Bill, 7-2 on Jack Kerouac. The 1 horse, you got the 6 Jules Shillelagh, I think, at 9-2. 5-1 on the Shoba's Joy, and then you got 8-1 a couple others, and then double digits everywhere else. Matthew, where did you land?
So I landed on I guess maybe a predictable spot, which is Phil D'Amato on the turf, but at a little bit of a price, which was the number 3 Sea of Cortez. This was one that started off in the Joseph O'Brien barn over in Europe and over in the United Kingdom and Ireland, and I just thought was kind of that's noteworthy, and then comes over here and really struggled, almost won in debut actually here in North America, 6 furlongs, and then D'Amato stretched this horse out a little bit and really was more of a one-paced horse and wasn't really making up any ground. Goes to the bench and comes back after 6 months off, and granted dropped down to a maiden claiming 50, but ends up getting that win off the bench and shows a little bit more burst there than what this horse had shown previously. This horse has some good tactical speed. Is not going to be a deep closer necessarily. I think there's a fair amount of pace in this race. So I was kind of looking for a horse that could sit that mid-pack trip and then make a run. And now you're second back from a pretty significant layoff. I love Caravaggio as a sire in this spot. And, I think D'Amato places this horse in an effective spot in a kind of an allowance, starter allowance 50. And I think this one just fits in a lot of ways. And I think could be a horse that, even if you are a little bit of a chalk eater at one of the races later on tonight, I think, or later on in the card, you could easily still get a nice price in this first leg. So the 3 was my top pick at 10-1. I know you and I both also like the number 1, but that was one of your A's. So I'll let you talk about Jack Kerouac a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a real interesting point about the race. Um, Unlike the East Coast, the West Coast, when you get these turf races, you get an honest pace usually. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, these things get wired. If going a mile, they get wired going 47 to the half, right? You get some speed out here, and looking at the optics plot, you see the 2, 4, 6, 5 kind of bunched up here. So you got a possibility of there being a bit of a pace meltdown. We got a red contention, and we got a speed rate of 67. Generally, I think anything over like 35 or 40 means that you're going to get there's a good chance of you getting a kind of a hot pace. So 67
Yeah.
is pretty significantly high here. So yeah, I looked at the back half, and you see your squares here. I think horses like your 7 Caribbean King, Jack Kerouac, Sia Cortez, and the 8 Neshoba's Joy are probably the ones primed to kind of take advantage of this pace scenario. I think your 9 Adios Cole has a shot possibly as well to kind of take advantage of it, depending on how he kind of takes to the synthetic here. Or the turf rather, because his
Sure.
starts have been on a synthetic. But I liked your 3 Sia Cortez as well. I same kind of thing that you were seeing there. Kind of a light bulb moment. The horse seemed to be pretty just running kind of evenly. Finally comes back as a mid-season 4-year-old and seemed to kind of figure it out. And they're running him right back, same jock. And I see that run line, and that running line I think is kind of what's going to be successful here. Sitting fourth or fifth, and making that one run. So I definitely think Sia Cortez makes a bunch of sense. The one Jack Kerouac is kind of like same story, different writer here. Does have that same type of run style. They stretched it out, stretched the horse out to go, mile in the eighth, and was kind of even there. But the winner came back to win next time out. Then maybe just not having a spot to run. They ran at Los Alamitos in an allowance race. Ran fine, but I don't think that that's what this horse wants to do. So I like to switch back to turf. Frezu is D'Amato's number one guy, so him getting on this horse makes me think this horse is obviously very well meant, and this horse has definitely got the figures I think here to kind of win. The two Belmont Bill, your favorite, I just think is going to be pace compromise in this spot. I just don't think that he's going to be able to, get out there and set the fractions he wants, and kind of win. Last time out went 22 and 4, 46 and 2, and then ended up losing by a half length. And I kind of see that that's probably what's going to happen to him here. I think one, if you're a vertical player, one, I think that would be great to key in like a trifecta in second and third, and play a couple of these closers in the other spots. But yeah, 1 and 3 are kind of where my eyes went to first. And then the 7 Caribbean King, I think, was another one that if you I'm kind of just looking at run style. Like you look on
Yeah.
speed figures on Briz, he kind of fits. I haven't checked, sheets or time form or DRF or anything else, but I mean this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a horse that's going to go ahead and sit, a little bit off. And that last race, something happened, didn't make up on the ground. It's coming here off the layoff. You see Raylu get aboard here, who's had a nice start to the meet, winning at 14%. Yeah, I think this horse has got a couple of back races that fit. I definitely prefer the mile. I would probably prefer this horse going even shorter, than that. But
Well, it's an interesting horse too, right? Because he's still a maiden. I mean, he hasn't even won yet, and yet they
yeah,
just kind of have given up running him against maidens because I think because he was disqualified from purse money, so he's still technically a maiden, but I guess he's not allowed to run against winners anymore or run against maidens anymore. So they've had to move him up. So his running lines look a little bit unusual, but he's absolutely fit against I think tougher company in this spot. So. I think he makes sense. And you mentioned the number 8, and that's one that I'm a little interested in as well. Neshoba's Joy, again, just a horse that's going to have probably the best late kick of the group. I know that that's what time form, projected as the highest late pace horse in the race. So that's one that's going to come running late. Now, what's interesting is Carla Gaines goes to the blinkers here. And so you wonder if this horse might show a little bit more speed, but I don't know if it's so much that the horse is going to suddenly go from sitting last to trying to run up on the pace, as much as go back and look at the trip this horse had when the horse broke its maiden. And what did it do? It sat the trip you just described earlier, sat fourth, and then made a move. And so I wonder if the blinkers kind of have that type of an effect of like, let's just get away and sit mid pack or at least a little bit closer. And rather than just spotting the field, 10 lengths in some instances. So I think that would be the one. And Gaines has been, as always, off to a strong start. I think 6 for 13 in the exacta with her runners so far at Del Mar. So that was one at 5-1 that I thought was a little bit interesting. But you also have the 9 as one that you like a little bit as well. That
yeah,
synthetic shipper. Yeah.
yeah, and like I said, this is the same thing. We're looking at a horse that's been running in much shorter. It was running on those synthetic sprints at Gulfstream, and now they tried stretching him out last time, going a mile, but I look at the speed or the pace in that race. I see 25 and 1, 49 and 2 going a mile in
Yeah.
the synthetic. Like this horse just happened to end up on the lead. I don't think this horse wants to be on the lead. I think this horse wants a target. Gets Kazushi Kimura, who's a fine rider. Off to a modest start so far to start the meet. But Yeah, I just think that this is a horse that kind of wants a target. You look at the maiden breaker, kind of set off the pace and won. And you look at his other races and every single time he's kind of dropped back and made that one run. The figures look okay on my end. And that
Yeah.
stretch out, he just kind of ended up on the front, and I don't think that's where he wanted to be. So I think being posted outside, even if he does show a little bit more hustle than he has, I don't think there's any way he ends up on the lead. And I think Kimura is going to be able to kind of make, get his trip, make that run. So yeah, I'm taking off the pace horses here, which is not typical Josh stuff. But I got the 1-3, I got the 7 and the 9. I mean, honestly, I'd probably use the 8-2. I'd probably AB it somehow, but yeah, I want basically all the off the pace horses, and I don't want any of the horses that are going to be on the lead, and those tend to be most of your short prices. I mean, the 2 Belmont Bill is 3-1. The Umberto Rispoli, Jules Shillelagh, he's 9-2. So I think that if you kind of get around those two, and you might get a little bit of a nice start here to the pick five.
Well, and I'll just put in a very quick plug for our track stats on Naira Bets, where you can get this information on Del Mar as well. And I'll just share this with everybody listening. So far at Del Mar, through the first 3 weeks, there have been 31 turf route races. Only 16% of those races were one gate to wire. So you have seen closers be pretty effective. I know sometimes West Coast turf has a reputation of being speed favoring, but 51% of favorites have been tracking within 3 lengths of the pace, or 51% of winners, I should say, have been tracking within 3 lengths of the pace at the half mile mark. 32% have been closing from more than 3 lengths back at the half mile mark. So again, going 2 turns on the turf, you have actually generally wanted to find horses coming from off the pace. And I think this race just emphasizes that even more.
Yeah, and I always forget I have to hit the button here. But like one of the cool things about optics here is I'm just gonna go back. Oh, going back dates. All right. So you get like charts here, right? So if we look at right here we go. I think this is a pretty good race here. We got right a 3 furlong or a 8 furlong turf race, right? And your 5 finished second here. And like you see this big old square up here. I mean, normally like I would be sending my non-existent child's college fund through on this horse, right? But what
Yep.
do you see? You see the square that's sitting in second and tracking trip getting third, and you see this 2 horse who once again is kind of sitting that tracking trip go. But this is one of the cool things. You go back through and you can go and look through old ones. I mean, here is a 5 furlong turf race. You got the all the speed here. No, it's these trackers down here. The 10 obviously sat that tracking trip, or should have per the optics plot. Obviously, you can go back and watch the replay. But
Yeah.
it's always interesting to go back. You can see where these horses that one race is kind of plotted out, and you can kind of compare that to what you think, like how you think races are going to kind of play out pace wise here. Um, Anything else on this race?
No, I think we covered it. It's a race where I'm going to probably spread at least 3, probably 4. And like you, I'm not going to include a single horse that I have planted up on the lead, and I'll just go with everybody coming from off the pace and hope to catch one of those.
And I see Charles did chime in a little bit when we were talking about academics. Apparently, everyone at where he works at, he went in IT, just uses Copilot to write their papers now.
Yeah, no,
So,
that'd have
yeah,
been great back in 2007. That would have been dope if I had something like that.
I
But
I,
yeah.
I will say not one of my least. I don't want to say when I was in college, like Wikipedia was just starting up.
Okay.
And so I mean it had been around a little bit, but like it started like that was the new thing that was going to be a problem,
Yeah.
because everyone's like, oh, they're just going to look at the stuff on Wikipedia. And I mean I kind of used it, but what I used it more to like I would go deeper and like search for sources and stuff and things like that through it.
Yeah.
And I think I wrote an entire non-Western music paper, basically, all
Yeah.
using Wikipedia. But You know, now
By the
now
way,
now the machines just do it for you.
seriously, by the way, I want to give a shout out. I am drinking tonight. I'm drinking a little bit of a beverage here because, of course, we don't have racing tomorrow, so I can actually drink a little bit. Um, but I need to give a shout out to Frog Alley, which, if
Ooh.
any of you hang out in the capital region, Frog Alley, a very popular bar in Schenectady, just a little bit south of Saratoga. So having their lakeside summer kolsch and pretty enjoyable, gotta say. Not quite the Nair Bet Superfecta Summer Ale, but pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm drinking. I'm actually drinking some scotch tonight. I have a Bunda by Abalor.
Okay.
It's a
There you go.
barrel proof sherried scotch. Very very
Yeah,
nice. On Thursdays, I play uh, I play online soccer with a couple of guys from the UK.
I love it. I don't know what that
So
means, but I love it.
so we play a video game, and so but it's just a bunch of us, and like so it's just hilarious because there today we had a nice conversation about the word geezer and how it means different
Uh-huh.
things, and how it means different things in the UK as it does
Yeah,
here.
it
uh
does. Yeah,
but
that's
yeah,
funny.
so I was feeling scotch after talking with Brits
I
the
love it.
whole day.
I love
But
it.
race 7 here. We're gonna be going 5.5 furlongs on the dirt. And your morning line favorite here is going to be the 5 Hothead at 5-2, Style Cat at 3-1, Charms Away at 5-1, Wings of Freedom at 8-1, Silverado Storm also at 8-1. Then you get double digits everywhere else. You only got only 10 horses are drawn in. You got two AEs in here, and you know I think of the horses that have run, I was most interested in the 4 Charms Away. Coming off a little bit of a layoff here for Luis Mendez. And for those of you who don't play a lot of West Coast races, and don't follow the West Coast, I mean, this is basically what Luis Mendez does. He
Hmm.
races 2-year olds and he gets them to win early, and then he might keep a handful of them, but most of them end up changing barns. He's almost like a West Coast Wesley Ward in some ways. But
A little bit like a John Hancock
there you
as
go.
well at Keeneland. Like he's very famous for like flipping his horses around a lot of times after they run it too. Yeah.
And this horse on debut ran a huge figure.
Yeah.
Looked really well, good. And then coming back second time was a huge favorite, and just kind of just didn't fire that time. And I don't really know what happened, but it seemed like it was good enough or something happened enough that they felt to take a couple weeks off. But then I look at that work tab, and I mean that horse is apparently been on a break, but he just, I don't know, fired 36-4, 46-4, 47-4 in the gate work. I mean, that to me tells me that this horse is going to be primed and ready. You're getting 5-1 here. We'll see if that kind of holds. But of the horses that have a race, I think that this is the one that makes the most sense. You look, I think there's two. This dam has had two horses run at 2, with one of them as a winner. So there is a little bit, at least, of a 2-year-old success on the dam side. And there's just not a ton of it in this race. The dam has got, I think, 4 starters at 2 with 3 winners. The one has got another 50% win rate at 2. But I don't know. The one kind of seemed I don't know, both of his efforts have been kind of flat. So I have a little bit less faith in that one kind of taking a step forward as I might with the 4, where maybe there was an excuse last time out. Um, but yeah, the only other horse I have written down as an A is the 5-2 favorite, the 5 Hothead. Bodie Express is hitting at 18% first time starters so far. And obviously Warfront also generally produces pretty precocious horses that win early. So yeah, I thought that this was a one of those horses that just looked like he's probably primed to kind of fire out fresh. Mark Glatt does pretty well with first time starters. He's 17% first time starters. And then you see Antonio Frezu get aboard, and you see Phil D'Amato's got horses in here. And
Mm.
Frezu is on, and Mark Glatt. So I don't know. I'm playing the jockey game a little bit. That this must be a very, uh, this horse is probably the goods. If Frezu decided to stay here, so yeah, those are the only two horses that I have as A's. I have the 5 and the 4. Where did you land, Matthew?
So the 4 was definitely one that I liked a lot. I had it as an A in this spot as well, for the reasons you mentioned, and I think this one just it makes a lot of sense. And if you go back and watch the replay, the horse was a little bit slow getting out of the gate last time out, and you know this. I mean, these 2-year-old races, if a horse is a step slow, just pack it in. I mean, it's just not going to work. And so you really do have to break well. And the horse broke well in that previous race in the debut and ran pretty well, I thought, as well. And you highlighted the fact that there was a next out winner from that last race. And you like to see that from these 2-year-old races, horses moving a step forward. But yeah, the works are nearly impossible to ignore in that regard. So one of the things I would say about the number 5, which I might kind of the hothead, which might go against him a little bit in this spot, is the Dam. Some Temper has had 3 raced foals, and none of them won on debut. In fact, none of them have even hit the board in debut. And most of them actually seem to be more intended for the turf or for the dirt or for the synthetic. So interesting to see. Obviously, we've not seen this Bodie Express some Temper mix before, so maybe that adds a little bit of precocity. But Glatt certainly is a trainer who knows how to get them ready first time out. But I'd be, maybe willing to try to, beat that favorite on a couple of tickets, as well as the number 1 Style Cat for Peter Miller. This horse, I just hate the inside rail in these 5.5 furlong sprints. That's just such a tough place to be. And this horse does not have elite early speed by any stretch. So the problem is you catch a horse with a flyer coming out of the, next to the horse like Style Cat. And then suddenly this horse starts getting shuffled back and just isn't in a good position. Now, Ray Lu's a very strong jockey, knows how to get horses out of the gate, but I still worry about that inside rail with young horses. It's just something I never like in particular. Although a horse that I was a little interested in was the number 2, Winds of Freedom, 8-1 on the morning line for Doug O'Neill. Now, O'Neill isn't a trainer who necessarily gets them cranked up first time out. He has some success, but it's not his thing necessarily. But what interested me in this one was the pedigree. So this is out of a Lemon Drop kid, Dam Lemon Drop Sis, who was a maiden in 9 starts, but has produced a first out winner who, oh, by the way, was just the full sibling to this horse. So Grammy winner was shared the same sire, and Dam was a first out winner on the synthetic. But this one has turned out pretty strong runners in debut for all 3 of her raced foals. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see. And the horse has turned in some solid works, 48 flat, 48 and 3, 36 and 2, 38 gate. Flat, work. So I thought there were some things there to like with this horse. And at 8-1, you're getting a little bit of a price. The only other horse that I was a little interested in was a little further outside, which was the number 9, Silverado Storm at 8-1. This is one who has had a couple of nice works as well. You go back and look, 46 and 4, 47 and 3. Last time out, 47 and 4 gate work. I always like to see a good gate work right before debut for these 2-year-olds. And you have Luis Mendez, who you mentioned earlier with the 4. But again, this is his other horse here. And, he tends to get him pretty cranked up in debut. And, you see the Dam, while the one raced foal that this horse has produced has not won in debut, the horse was a 2-time winner already and finished in the exacta 6-12 starts. So, has at least shown at a lower level, admittedly, at Golden Gate, has shown some ability to run and have some nice workouts. But, for me, 4, 9 are kind of the 2 prices that I'm going to be focusing in on along with the 2. And I'm going to try to beat the 1 and the 5 as a result.
Yeah, you kind of you took my lone B, which was the 9 Silverado Storm. I kind of looked at it the same way as you. This is another horse that's been working well. It's a Luis Mendez horse, and he's just great with these 2-year-olds. Heartwood, is this the first starter for Heartwood?
Second.
Second starter. Okay. I
Yeah.
was gonna say it doesn't look like there's a lot. There's any stats on Heartwood. Um, so yeah. So you know these breeders. I don't know. There was I forgot which book it was, but there's a note in one of the the classic breeding books, or not breeding
Mhm.
books, handicapping books. It might have been Brad Free's Handicapping 101,
Okay.
where they talked about these horses, when they're new to breeding,
Yeah.
that it seems like before these horses are raced, like especially if there's connections between the owner and the breeder, um, that they try to make sure that the first couple runners are in good spots. So you'll often see, like, a horse that maybe they paid a bit much for. All of a sudden you see, why is this horse in maiden claiming? It's because they're trying to get that the winners in the book kind of up a little bit. But so I don't know if that necessarily matters in this spot. It was just a fun thing that I read in a book. I forgot which book, which I think the sire that they even referenced was, I think, Istan,
Oh,
right?
that's funny.
They were
Okay.
talking
Yeah.
about Istan, like, like, oh, like, a small boutique breeder, and when they first they were very, like, selective about, like, where they ran and stuff like that. So it was just an interesting little tidbit, and just some of the
I will
weird.
say, no, that's a very interesting tidbit. And I will say, I was just at the Fasig Tipton open sales this past week. And I can't tell you, Josh, the number of times they emphasize the fact that a certain sire produced a winner since the book was written, right? Since the sales book was printed, oh, this sire's also produced X winner, X winner, X winner, sort of a thing, just to try to emphasize that. That's very big for these first and second crop sires who may not have a big reputation. So it's interesting. A sire like McKinsey kind of got off to a slow start, and all of a sudden he's kind of caught up momentum. He's had 3 or 4 pretty live runners, but just over the last week. So they've been mentioning that repeatedly. Chancer McPatrick, who won that big Saratoga race on the undercard, I believe, of the Jim Dandy Day. That was one that really kind of popped out and made some impressions. So always interesting. And they absolutely want to put these sires in the best position first crop as well. So a lot of times they're going to send pretty productive brood mares, as we outlined with the number 9. Lucy Wiggles has been a productive brood mare. I mean, has turned out 3 winners with all 3 of her foals. So that's the sort of brood mare you want to send to a first crop sire to try to produce another winner, because you want to give these sires their best chance in that first crop. And I was talking with someone at a New York farm up here, and he had just brought in another sire from Kentucky, and he said, we get, it's a little bit of a reclamation project. He said they just didn't pair him up with anybody good his first couple of crops, and now people don't think he's a good sire. But I don't believe that, and so I think he's a lot better. He just hasn't been given the chance to perform yet. So it's interesting to see when you get into these 2-year-old races, and always a fun angle. And I know our mutual friend Jessica Tugwell could talk for days about this stuff, and is much more knowledgeable than either you or I when talking about this stuff. But it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was laughing because I was thinking about right now too is, I was like, I wonder what Jessica thinks. So, well, maybe I'll have to pick her brain on that a little bit. But
Yeah,
that's
100%.
that's fun. Anything else on this race?
No, I think we talked it through.
Cool. All right. Race 8 here. We have the graded stakes on this sequence here. The grade 2 yellow ribbon. And this is a fun little race. We're going to be going a mile and 16th on the turf. We have 6 horses in this race, and you have a 3-5 morning line favorite in Anisette, who looks to be just the absolute class of this field. And you know, I kind of had to make a stand, I think, here, and I am against the 2 Anisette, and maybe this will be my demise. Obviously, this is a horse that's rattled off two Grade 1 wins, um, albeit at longer distances, and does have a couple of wins at a mile. But it's kind of interesting. I'm looking back at those races, and um, you know, I don't know. I just think that when I look at this race, I don't see a whole heck of a lot of pace. And I think a horse like the 5,
Yeah.
Bellabelle, has got a really good shot at just getting out on the front end and maybe stealing this. Similar to what happened in the Megahertz 3 back. They tried that same move last time, but the difference is last time they went 22 and 2, 46 and 1, and they dueled the entire way. Um, and I just don't know if I see anybody who's going to want to duel with this horse if they set, an honest, 23 and 3, 23 and 4 type type pace. I mean, the 4 is the dead closer. The 6 has got some speed. But I mean that speed was at Santa Rosa that I really saw. And other than that, it seems to kind of be more of a tactical type. I mean, you do get Mike Smith aboard, so maybe that changes things. But I don't know. I think there's a good shot for Bellabelle to just kind of get out there and kind of steal it. Looking at the optics plot for this race, um, you see just a tiny little square up here. And it just tells me that, on both the standard and the surface of distance plot, this is the horse with the most early speed. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that there might be a shot here that this 5 can kind of get out there and just kind of go wire to wire. I mean, obviously the 2 is got all of the class in the world, compared to this field, and the figures match up everything else. But I don't know. I think that pace might just win out here, and there's a shot that this 5 goes wire to wire. And so small field going against a short price favorite. I'm going to single the 5 here, and hope I can 3 cherry. Well, I guess it's more like a 2.5 cherry, because it's an EP6, but see if we can maybe 2.5 cherry my way to a sneaky single here. Where did you land, Matt?
So I agree with everything you said. I still have Anisette as my single in this spot, but I completely agree that, in my opinion, you either single the 5 or you single the 2. That's the way I would approach this from a ticket construction standpoint, depending on your opinion of the race. And quite frankly, I think having multiple tickets is something that I encourage as well. And if you're going to, I think having one doing one and one doing the other, nothing wrong with that, if you want. But yeah, for me, Anisette was just hard to get around in this spot. I do think she does appear to be just the class of this field. One thing I will say, and I don't know what Brisnet looks like necessarily. I see it up on the screen. She doesn't have a massive speed figure advantage over a horse like the number 1 Uncorked. I mean, it's not, this is not like Warlike Goddess running against, lesser company sometimes when she's got like a 10-point advantage
Yeah.
over everybody else. I mean, it's a modest advantage that she has in that regard. But, obviously from a class perspective, I mean, just incredible. I mean, 9 for 10 in the exacta with 6 wins, and has just rattled off 2 grade 1s in a row over some pretty nice horses. But like you said, there's a paceless race, and if Kimura can carve out that megahertz trip, then absolutely that horse can potentially pull the upset. But I think that's the only alternative to Anisette, in that if you think that the 5 can do it, great. Otherwise, everybody's going to be kind of sitting the same trip as Anisette, and you're going to have to convince me that somehow they're now better than Anisette. And so I don't see that happening. So you're relying on the trip, and I agree with your analysis. If anybody's going to do it, it's the 5. I ultimately landed on Anisette here. I think part of it too was, from a standpoint of just thinking about the overall construction that I was having of my ticket potentially for this sequence. I'm fading some favorites in these early races. And so it's like, something I can live with also singling a horse like Anisette, who's probably going to be pretty popular, because I'm trying to beat the favorites in at least 3, if not 4 of the other legs. And so even if I'm taking chalk here, I can still probably hit a pretty good ticket if my opinions are correct in those other legs. as opposed to, man, I'm eating chalk in the first 2 legs, and now here I come with this race where if there's a 3-5 favorite, in that instance, I'm always going to try to beat them. But it's a tough race, but it's hard for me to make a case for anybody else other than the 2 or the 5 in this spot.
Yeah. Stephen Fox saying, Del Mar, I thought this is where we come for canceled racing talk. No, you probably find that all over Twitter.
Yeah. And I do love Twitter for canceled racing because everybody becomes like a racing expert the second this stuff gets brought up. And I think that it is important to remember that any racetrack has multiple constituencies that they have to deal with. And sometimes they are dealing with multiple constituencies within their organization, like the horsemen, the jockeys, etc. They're also dealing with state regulatory agencies. They're dealing with state stewards and rules. So it's not just the CEO of NYRA just sitting in his office, or any track for that matter, sitting in their office just going, on the turf, off the turf. We're doing this, we're canceling that. Like, that's not the way this works. Like, you have to get a ton of consensus from a lot of different people who have a lot of different opinions. And it's not the easiest thing in the world. But I approach this as a horse player first, and it can be frustrating at times. But now that I'm inside the machine a little bit more, I do understand why some of these decisions take a little bit longer to make and can be a little bit more complicated.
Look, just tell Donnie to keep it on the turf already, okay?
Donnie's always going to keep it on the turf for us. That's the key.
Anything else in this race?
Not really. I mean, it's a nice little field, but like with 6 horses. The other thing I'll say, Josh, I'm interested in your opinion on this. When you have a short field like this, and maybe this is me being broken by watching too much New York turf racing, whenever I see a relatively potentially paceless race in a 6-horse field, I just assume they clump together in a glob and they just go around really tightly joined and, the whole way. If I was riding the 5, if I'm in Kimura, use the horse's speed. Get that horse 3 lengths clear of everybody else and just comfortable. And just use the horse's speed to its advantage. Because I can't tell you the number of times I've seen, and you know it, I've seen a race very similar to this one with the PPs, limited field, and we just strangle out slow fractions, and you're actually mitigating the horse's biggest advantage, which is the horse is fast. So let the horse be fast.
Yeah, I remember, well, the thing I also seem to think, when the smaller the field, the more dangerous speed is, in my opinion. I remember there was I believe it was the Matchmaker Stakes at Monmouth 3 or 4 years ago. And I want to say that there was a really, really nice Chad Brown horse in there.
Makes sense.
Real, grade 2 winner. I can't remember who it was, but I remember it was a 3-horse field. And then there was there were 2 other horses, but not even remotely close class-wise or speed figure-wise. And the horse that got the lead just opened up a little bit, and they never caught her. Right. And it was just like, it's just like, this is the graded stakes race. But as soon as there's only 3 horses in the race, everyone just forgets how to ride, which it's just like, so yeah, I don't know. That's kind of like, I see this race, right? I see only 6 horses in it. I see a horse that's got very, very tactical speed and is probably the speed of the speed in this race, and is proven to be able to wire a race like this. That's why my eyes kind of go there. And I see Keith in chat. He's excited to play some Del Mar. So
there you go.
I'm glad to see Keith. Was Keith up last weekend?
He was. Yeah, I got to see Keith. Hung out with him in the paddock a little bit. No, I had a good time. It was nice to see him.
Yeah, apparently last weekend just absolutely took it out of Mark and Caleb, since both of them ended up missing this. I don't know. They're still recovering, apparently.
One thing I'll also, just a final point I'll make just to that last topic that you raised with regards to a small field. I spoke with Richie Migliori a couple weeks ago when we talked about the Coaching Club America Oaks. And I asked him, I said, as a jockey, what changes for you in a short field? And he said, the number one thing to keep in mind, he said, in a short field, He goes, favorites get into more trouble in a short field than any other type of race because he said everybody keys on the favorite. Everybody knows who to look for the entire race. And in a way that you don't necessarily do that in a bigger field because you're just so focused on your trip, your horse, trying to get your spot, that sort of thing. When it's a short field, everybody knows this is the heavy favorite. This is who I have to be keying on. And he goes, they get into so much trouble. He goes, it's crazy. He goes, doesn't matter how short the field is. He goes, I've seen more troubled trips from heavy favorites in a short field than any other type. And so it is something to keep in mind that, in these short fields, and if there's a scratch or two, you could end up with, 4 or 5 horses. So it's one of those things just to keep in mind. And I see in the chat that Keith says he met Caleb. I would personally like to meet Caleb tonight, but apparently that's not in the cards.
Were you able to meet up with the guys last week?
I did. I saw.
Nice.
Yeah, I met with the guys. I met Papa Knight as well.
Nice.
I met Caleb's dad, so that was really cool. Met Caleb. Hung out with him. Well, I met him before, but I hung out with Caleb a bit, and it was nice. And then I appropriately mushed their show bet parlay.
Nice,
because they were like, "Do you like the 2 or the 4?" And I was like, "I haven't really looked in the race." I'm like, "Come on, just pick one." I was like, "I like the 4," and then the 4 ran 4th. So there.
Nice. Since we already spent some time talking about short fields, but there was there's a very popular Twitter personality who, love him or hate him, Mr. Inside the Pylons. He had mentioned once about these short fields and or more specifically, I think it's really, really short price favorites. How often people also, instead of just playing the short favorite, they're like, I'm going to be against the favorite, and then they key like the second choice, and just like how often that is actually also a losing play. And then it just makes me think about how many times have we seen a 4 or 5 horse field where the longest price wins?
100%.
It's just like, so I really do. I think to Mig's point, that totally makes sense, right? Like, hey, like it's a 5 horse field. Everyone sees where the Klarovich horse is, right? All right, we got to pay attention to where that horse is, right? As opposed to 8, 9, 10 horses where it's like, all right, I got too much other stuff to navigate.
Right.
But yeah, I think, like I said, like in here, I think Bell's got Route 1, right? Just get to the front and just go. We'll see if Kimura kind of does that, is able to to do that. And I do see Steven saying that, hey, look, Caleb and Mark might not be here, but we're going to stay on brand, covering a 6 horse field and taking longer than a 12 horse field. So, thank you. Thank you for tuning in, Steven. We
could cover a walkover in an hour. We'd have fun doing it. So
it was funny. I'm taking notes for timestamps, and I'm like, I keep on having to extend how far out this is because we keep going. But race 9 here, we got a 12,500 non-winners of 2, 5.5 furlongs on the main track here. And we do have a full field of 12 with an AE. Now, Matthew, I don't know if you've seen this on Twitter, and we haven't talked about this yet for Del Mar.
Yeah.
Do you believe in the tide theory?
No.
No?
But I know what it is.
You know what it is, but you don't believe in it? Have you done any research on it?
I've not, but I do not believe it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But I absolutely, but I will say, I don't know if you know, a different Keith. Do you know Keith? What's his screen name? I forget his handle, but there's a different Keith on Twitter who actually put this into his models, and it
Keith
actually,
Bush?
Yes, Keith Bush.
Hong Kong?
He put this into his models, and he said it made no difference at all.
Interesting.
So
I'll have to ping Keith. Keith is probably the biggest You've Got to Be Shot-Tinning Me fan.
Is he really?
There.
That's awesome. That makes sense.
Yeah, I love Keith. I met him at Breeders' Cup 2 years ago, and he was...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Dude, he got me so amped up because I was already ready to bet Taiba.
Oh,
that
he was really
classic.
big on Taiba that
Dude,
day.
and
I remember that. Yeah.
he's like I had to call my wife because of how large of a wager I'm gonna place. Like he's like it was the largest wager he'd ever placed to win.
Yeah.
He said the model, everything is just alarm bells going off. I gotta bet Taiba. Like it just makes the most sense. And I was already amped up to bet Taiba and try and beat Flightline. And
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I burned that
It
money,
didn't work
but
out.
it definitely did not work out. Um, that's funny. Our friend Greg Murphy, aka Murphy,
Yeah.
I don't know, he had mentioned it, and it seemed like the first couple days it held true, and then I just like stopped paying attention to it. But yeah, I was curious whether or not you were a Tide believer or not. Not a
And
Tide Pod believer, but just actual Tide.
yeah, I know all about it, but I don't subscribe. Although, I'll be going out there this November for the Breeders' Cup, so maybe I need to do a little
Will
bit of
be going
research
out
on that.
there.
So we'll see. Yeah.
Will be going out there. So
I will be,
I
yes.
I no, I said we.
Oh, yeah.
We will be.
We will
Caleb,
indeed.
yeah.
Yes.
You know, Caleb and I, we definitely are in. I think Mark's going to be in, so we'll see. I got to figure out the ticket situation because apparently the tickets I was going to buy sold out, so I got to figure something out there.
No.
But
All right.
you know how that goes.
I'll get you to be my cameraman. So that'll
Oh,
be
there you go.
exactly. Yeah.
I have my. I'll bring my ring light. Oh, never mind. I
There
can't
you
bring that here.
go. There you go.
I got the tripod with the ring light here.
There you go.
And now I just completely messed up my setup. So let's try not to break anything. There we go.
All right.
Anyways, your 3-1 favorite is the Devil Among Us at 3-1. Pop Doro at 7-2. The Big Chizola at 9-2. Pat's Paddock pick at 5-1, and you get double digits at everybody else. Where did you land here?
Yeah, this is a tough one because it's tough because there's a lot of speed on paper. But the thing about Del Mar is it plays pretty well to speed in these sprints. So again, going back to track stats, just to share that with everybody, we've seen that in dirt sprints at Del Mar through 3 weeks, we've had 32 races, 72%, 72% of winners have been leading at the half mile or 3/8 mark. So it's a little speed bias. I love when people talk about Saratoga being speed biased, and then I share the Del Mar track stats. I'm like, really? Saratoga's speed bias, huh? Okay, well, what's Del Mar then exactly? Like nuclear, so to some extent, I think I kind of wanted to go with the speed of the speed here, and so I know that's not particularly necessarily a profitable move, but looking at it, I thought the 1 and the 11 look fast on paper, and certainly on time form they're rated faster. I don't know if they necessarily stick. So I looked at a horse like the number 7, the Big Chizola, is one that I really liked. I was willing to draw a line, obviously through that last effort, just stumbled out and lost the rider. And so, but if you go back and look at some of those other efforts, only a one-time winner, obviously, which is the conditions of the race, but has turned in some pretty solid efforts and has good early tactical speed. And so that was kind of the one horse that I had up top. I think Devil Among Us is another very logical choice for Phil D'Amato as well. Another one with good early speed and should be able to handle it now. Second time facing open company. But it was hard for me to get around the speed in this particular spot. And I thought Pop Doro was the other one. And those are your top 3 choices. And, I wasn't particularly creative in this race, but it was also hard for me to draw a huge distinction between those 3. So I'm interested. You are the speed master in these sorts of things. So where did you ultimately end up going in this?
Yeah, this was tough for me. I think to kind of agree with where you kind of were talking, I think the 3 Pop Doro makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I think, I think last time out, you look at that race and he probably never had a shot in that race because he was so far back. He was 2 lengths off of it. So now they're cutting this horse back, and this horse does have legit speed. I mean, 22 to the quarter speed. So I could still see, with the inside draw, him being very dangerous here. I'm not sure about the price. And, in these N2L races, I have a hard time sometimes taking these horses that have all these starts.
Yeah.
I see 10 starts for him. I mean, you see 15 starts for the one, you
Mhm.
see 9 starts. So like, you would prefer to see maybe some lightly raced horses. So, I landed on the 6 here. I have the 6 as an A. Um and I'm kind of playing the horse for course angle here a little bit.
Mhm.
You look at the first 2 races that this horse ran with Emily Ellingwood aboard, and those 2 races look very, very good compared to, stacked up against some of these other horses. Going 6 furlongs on the dirt here at Del Mar during the summer meet. The horse goes to Santa Anita and runs okay in open company. Um, then they immediately put this horse in an allowance race on the turf for some reason. I guess they saw Uncle Mo in the bottom and they were just like, all right, we'll just put this horse on the turf. But um, that didn't go well. It went so well that this horse had to be laid up for about a year and a half. Came back to Santa Anita. First effort was fine, needed one, and then I don't know what happened that second try, but getting back to Del Mar, dropping in class even further, and still a relatively lightly raced horse, even though it's a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I thought maybe had a little bit of upside. When I look at the optics plot, you see this nice big old square sitting up in Q2 above the par line, so looks pretty dangerous here. Obviously, the 3 Pop Doro, I think to your point is got a good shot depending on what happens with the 13, if the 13 draws in or not, to
Yeah.
kind of sit second or third and just be the best of those horses. But this is also a horse that's run at this level. The last 2 races and hasn't, has finished third and third. But obviously, it really, really fits on optics. The other one, the 7, the big Chizola that you mentioned, also is a big optics horse, but it's another one. It's a 1 for 10 horse. It's really hard to kind of make a case for some of these. Um, you know, Maybe you could look at maybe like someone like the 9 horse picking it up here, went wire to wire
Just
in their
about. It's funny.
debut.
Just about to mention that horse. If you're looking for a bomb, I think that's the way to go because, you know, I always talk. When our mutual friend Gino Piccola and I will talk, he goes, Can each race tell a story sometimes?" And I think this is a prime example of a horse that each race tells a story. This horse comes out in debut. Granted, it's a maiden claiming 32, but runs for the aforementioned Luis Mendez, runs an absolute hole in the wind and wins, gets a 72 buyer speed figure, wins by 3 1/4 lengths in debut. And you're thinking, we're off with this horse going 7 furlongs, which is a tricky distance to get in debut. Doesn't run for promptly 19 months, comes back in a claiming 16 and shows a little bit of early speed, but then fades is exactly what you would expect. Then runs in an allowance N2L, at low sal, just 1,000 meters or 1,000 yards, and finishes 5th, fine, and now goes to George Papadromou. And I think this horse, I don't know, this horse I think might have a good race in him, and it wouldn't shock me if this horse won at 30 to 1 or a huge price. Like, I could absolutely talk myself into including the 9 on my tickets and thinking that's a really, I think, a valuable choice.
Yeah, and I mean, this horse was with Luis Mendez longer than this horse is older with Luis Mendez than most of
Yeah.
uh oh my goodness. Why am I blank? Oh, Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriends. So,
Yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
yeah. Interesting. I'm surprised they haven't tried this one on the turf yet.
Yeah.
I see Jimmy Creed on top. I think this might be one that maybe if this doesn't work out,
Yeah.
maybe
The
they
damn
try
side is
turf.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, this might be an interesting one on the turf, but yeah, I mean, I see that wire to wire win at Del Mar, at that unicorn 7 furlong distance. I'm like, hey, maybe coming back to Del Mar where the surf meets the turf and that, that high tide, it just carries this horse. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to
Um,
go back and we'll go back like the Weather Channel tide charts to see what was the tide on November 11th, 2022, and whether it matches up with what the tide patterns are going to be on Saturday. That's the way we're going to go.
Yeah, there was I think one of the horses in here. I thought also I had this horse as kind of a B type. The 5 Pat's Paddock
Mm-hmm.
pick I thought was another one that was kind of interesting in here. Um, I don't think that this horse is as fast as some of the other ones in here, but
Yeah,
this is another one that Sloan Win is here at Del Mar, and as soon as they get to Santa Anita, horse forgets how to run, and is coming back here as a 4-year-old, and I thought is kind of just progressively dropped down the class ladder, but is getting back to Del Mar where he hasn't missed the exacta in his 2 starts.
yeah,
He's got a first and has got a second there. Gets Victor Espinoza, who is riding basically part time now. So
yeah,
interesting that he gets aboard here. So I thought he was an interesting one on optics. He kind of plotted out in the middle of the plot. Which is usually a good place to be, not necessarily if it's super speed favoring, but this will be one. The nice thing, the thing I love about optics is after scratches it updates. So Saturday,
yeah.
during I make my notes, and then Saturday during the day, as you get scratches, the plot updates, and you can go ahead and you can kind of reevaluate for pace there. So we'll see once that 13 gets kind of scratched off, and once the other horses kind of move around, see where that ends up. I do think if the 13 draws in, very very interesting here because you look
Yeah.
at these other horses that haven't won in a very, very long time. The 13th got 2 starts and is coming off a win here at Del Mar where he went wire to wire.
You
And
crossed the line through the first one because it was on the turf,
yeah,
and so perfect on the dirt, and why not?
yeah. So if the 13 gets in, I mean, I'm 10-1. I don't think you'll get that. I think people will see the wire to wire effort. Brisnet's Fig looks slow. How's the buyer look? Does he look a little too slow here?
Buyer looks a little slow, 54, which
Yeah,
is, obviously a couple low because a lot of the main contenders are, closer into the 60s and maybe even the low 70s.
yeah. All right. We're gonna move on to race 10 here. We're gonna be going 5 furlongs on the turf, and we have I believe this is another oversubscribed field. Yeah, you have
It is.
12 in the main field, and you got a 13 as the AE here. Your morning line favorite is the 6 Miracle Ball at 3-1. Not a Sinner at 4-1. Queen Maxima 9-2. Gervin Gallup 5-1. Shout out to Chase Sessoms, the biggest Gervin fan in the world. And the 3 Wimberley at 8-1. Double digits on everybody else. I was a bit spread here. Um, and I was a bit spread, and maybe I'm getting a little too cute here. Maybe I'll hit the too cute alarm here. I don't have my alert set up yet, but I look at this race and I just look at some of these jockeys and am like, why are you riding this horse? Most notably, the 8 Rich of Joy gets Juan Hernandez aboard, who's obviously winning at 25%. And this horse is 20-1 in the book. Now, I think that lone start wasn't that bad. Finished fourth by 14. But I don't know how often you see this. All 3 horses that finished in front of it came back to win next out.
Yeah.
So coming out of I guess the keyest of key races here, where he finished or she finished fourth. But I see Juan Hernandez get aboard for a trainer that he's never ridden for, or at least not in the last couple of months. My eyes, alarm bells are going off. Reminds me of that Mike Smith flying in for one mount for Saffy Joseph Jr. and
Oh, yeah.
costing me $8,000. But yeah. this just set alarm bells off, and then I think Frazu is riding for Carla Gaines
Yeah.
on a 20-1 shot, and this is the horse that's you know first time in Carla Gaines's barn, and she doesn't do this very often, but she's got one win in 8 starts with first start with her, and yeah, you see Fraser get aboard here, and then you kind of look at the works, and this horse looks like he's prepped and ready to go. I mean, just progressively getting better here, and firing 47-4 August 4th on that work. So be interested to see what the clockers thought of those last couple works. But this is another 20-1 shot.
Yeah.
And you have arguably the second best turf rider probably in California in Fraser aboard. Um, so those two horses just like they just set off all kinds of warnings. Like these horses are probably well meant in this spot. So I'm using both of them in some way, shape, or form. Um, I think not a sinner makes a ton of sense in the spot, but I'll tell you, it's hard to kind of you see this the 4 straight seconds in a row. You
Mm-hmm.
see, basically hasn't missed a trifecta but once in their career, and I don't know. Maybe this horse is just too nice. Maybe this is a Midwest horse. Just too nice. Sorry. Doesn't
Yeah.
want to bump into people. Um, I mean, figure wise makes sense. You see, you see a 90 Briz figure, which I think beats everybody else in here by quite a margin. But I don't know, man. It's just a little tough to, a horse has that many chances. Now, Simon Callahan, I think doesn't win early is one that will take his time to bring a horse along. But I mean, I don't think nine starts is bringing a horse along at that point. So,
No.
um, yeah, is probably good enough to win here, but doesn't seem like it's going to be like a great bet at a great price. Horizontally, I think I might end up using. But another price I really liked was the 4 Blister in the Sun. And you kind of look at this, and maybe you don't see a ton to really get you excited for, but then you kind of see off that last Los Alamitos race. This is another one that has just absolutely been just working like a monster. It's got a bullet work in there at Los Al. He's got another 59-3, 5 furlong work, and then coming in here, and then when you go ahead and you open up that optics plot, and you look at this race, the 4 looks to be the speed of the speed. I mean, maybe the 13, but we don't know if the 13's drawn in. But the 4 Blister in the Sun looks to be your likely leader here, and going 5 furlongs on the turf, I will gladly go ahead and take who I think is going to be in the front at first call. The 7 horse obviously looks like a huge square here, but my concern is like he's looked this good and just hasn't won.
Right.
So I'm a little bit concerned with that one. And then heck, even the 8 Rich of Joy is sitting here in the middle of the plot. And then just I don't know gets probably the best jockey in California in Juan Hernandez aboard at 20-1. So my guess is you don't get that price, just because I think Juan himself will move that amount of money. But I don't know. I think the 4, the 7, the 8, and then I think even like I said, the 2 is probably in here as a bit of a kind of well meant type with the shot. But I'm curious where you landed.
Yeah, this is a very spready race, and this is one where I'm against the top two choices. You already outlined the reason to be against the number 7, not a sinner. Listen, after 9 tries, you either win or you don't. If this horse beats me, he beats me. She beats me, I should say. So be it. That's fine. I can live with losing to this horse, but I just can't bet on a horse that it just has these types of running lines of just close, 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 but not going to get it. The other thing is, I'll say that our morning line favorite, the number 6 Miracle Ball, is a first time starter for Francisco Garcia. And the damn Cotton Ball is over 4 with her first time starting foals. So it's not as if this was a monster pedigree. Now, Competitive Edge has been a solid sire, but not necessarily one that I am willing to take a really short price on. So if you go past those two, then suddenly you really do start falling into a lot of the horses you mentioned. So the 2 was definitely one I took a look at and definitely liked a little bit. I would say I also, if you're looking at first time starters, I do think the number 1 Queen Maxima at 9-2 is a little bit of an interesting horse for Jeff Mullins. He is a trainer who knows how to get horses ready first time out, has success with that. This is a horse that is sired by Buchero, and Buchero is now standing up here in New York. And it's interesting. I was speaking with the gentleman who owns the farm where Buchero now stands. And he said one of the reasons he is bringing Buchero, or he decided to bring Buchero to New York, was because how effective Buchero is producing synthetic offspring. And he goes, his yearlings are going to be ready for the new Belmont Park. And that he basically is like banking on Buchero just turning out nothing but freakish synthetic 2-year-olds on the synth up here in New York. And so it's kind of interesting to see the strategy involved with this. But obviously, Buchero also incredibly effective sire for dirt and turf as well. So that's one who has had some snappy works leading up to this. And so if he can escape the inside rail, which I don't love, I think it offers a little bit of a price. The other horse that I'll mention, who you've not brought up, is number 3 Wimberley at 8-1 for John Sadler, who this horse is making second start off the bench. Well, it was a relatively brief absence, but this one turned in a pretty solid effort in debut. And, obviously could have improved a little bit, but ran on the dirt last time out, I think is probably more well meant for the turf. So we'll see how that turns out. And then the final one that I'll mention is the number 10, Kalen Dana. And this is at 15-1. Another, you talk about big price. Neil Drysdale, blinkers coming on. This horse is 0-4. One of the things is, whenever this kind of goes along with what you said with regards to the 7, you start seeing 0-4, or like in the previous race, 1-4, fill in the blank. And you go, what's going on? At least I like to see an equipment change, right? Okay, we're trying something new here. Maybe this is going to yield a different result. So whether it's Lasix, whether it's a first-time gelding, whether it's blinkers coming on, what have you, maybe it's a jockey change sometimes, or sometimes you'll see a horse change barns, and that might be enough to kind of get the horse to perk up and change. But I like that we're going to blinkers on. The horse has decent speed. That should really just be accentuated going even shorter now. I like the Oscar performance up top. And, this horse has some decent races and, was relatively well meant in the regards of the horse, debuted, ran second, and was immediately stepped up to stakes company in the second start. So there were some expectations at one point. He had Hector Barrios, who's a pretty good turf rider out there. So I thought that was another interesting one, but this feels like a really spready race, and one where I am not willing to use the 2 shortest prices.
Yeah. I think maybe looking at this field, maybe the 7 can get it done, but I don't know. I just can't. I can't take that short of a price. The 6 Miracle Ball, I see 4% first time turf winners for Competitive Edge, 5% for High Cotton, the Dam sire, and no turf winners and 4 starters. I don't know how many have tried the turf, but taking 3-1 on that horse, I don't know. They must see something that I don't here with this horse. So definitely not using the 6, but I think there are a couple different places you could go. Anything else on this card?
No, I think that, like I said, it's a fun sequence, and it's one where, you're trying to beat the favorite in, that the stakes race. You're trying to beat Anisette. But I think, we both outlined a lot of strong price options in the other 3 or 4 legs, so that even if you end up going, I'm going to take chalk in the middle leg of the sequence, hey, you're still getting cash and prices in the other 3 or 4 in that pick 5 payout should be pretty decent. So, and I will say, I'll give a little final track stat here. At Del Mar through the first 3 weeks, 17% of winners have been 10 to 1 or higher at post time. And that is by far and away the highest percentage of 10 to 1 or higher.
Oh, I think we lost Matthew. I don't know. It's either my internet or Matthew's internet went out, but I guess that's gonna do it for us here. Obviously, you can check us out at ontherewronglead.com, at wrong_lead on Twitter. I am at Cherry Drank. You can catch Matthew at Fail to Menace and at Naira Bets. And yeah, guys, let's have a good weekend. Let's make some money, albeit unfortunately at a very limited amount of tracks. But good luck, everyone.